Hi guys, Johnny here from the Business Babble, and today we have Mark Blair from Effective Now. Mark, what is it you do?
So we do skills training in schools to help young people get ready for life after school to move into the workplace.
Perfect. So stay tuned for this podcast, like and share and subscribe. Cheers guys.
Cheers. You know what you're working towards in terms of your own personal development, because your mindset's only about achieving to the highest level you can achieve to. So I think certainly from a sports perspective is you get a lot of people who, I've got young Scott Steele working for me at the moment. Scotty came out of professional sport, played pro rugby for about 11 years, came back to Edinburgh, was injured, is retired at the age of 31 or whatever it was on these things.
Still a young lad.
And he just goes, well, I don't know what I can do. And you're kind of going, well, I know what you can do, because your skill set that I know, because I've been there myself, is massive, in terms of even just those soft skills of communication skills, leadership, delegation, all these type of things that you develop in sport. And he started as a skills tutor with us, and in the first few weeks he was like rapping the headlights, because was it, and now he's just absolutely flying.
That's good.
And he's just class.
Brilliant.
That's brilliant. So today, is that you started recording?
Yes,
I take it, Michael.
We'd
like to slide in that slide recording. See if we get authentic.
Yeah.
In case we're putting the fakeness on.
Yeah, exactly. Catch up with the nuggets.
So today we have Mark Blair on, and you run a company called Effective Now. Yep. Is that right? Oh,
that's the one. Yep.
So glad I wrote that down right. So Mark, I suppose we start at the beginning with everybody, to where you've been, to where you are now, and why and how you've created the business. So just for our listeners and for the background of you, where did it all begin for you, your life?
Well, life for me as a Northern Irish boy started when I came to Scotland to university, because I'm of an age and a generation that's what you did. You went through school, probably didn't really have an understanding of direction that I wanted to go in, but you kind of get advised that you're good in this and you're good in that. So I came over to university to study civil engineering at Heriot University way back in the very early 90s. And from there, obviously, I kind of played a lot of rugby through school and so forth. And that was coming to a point where rugby was starting to heading towards becoming professional. Right. So I didn't even go to my graduation. I flew out to New Zealand, and because I was playing an awful lot of rugby at that time, not quite sure why I was in university, to be honest with you. Headed out to New Zealand to play rugby out there. I had a fantastic experience, spent a couple of seasons out there, and was offered a professional contract with Edinburgh when rugby first went professional. Played for Edinburgh, ended up probably typical SRU fashion, things changed after a year. The professional game went from 4 teams down to 2 teams. I'd been offered a contract, but went back to play for Ulster. Was fortunate enough to go back there. Had a great time. Ulster won the Heineken Cup. That I was part of that team that won that, so that was great. Ended up going down to the south of France, purely for the love of the sport. Absolutely nothing to do with the money. And then ended up, if you marry a Scotswoman, you end up back in Scotland. So I came back to end up playing for the Border Reivers when they were still in existence. So that was kind of direction of travel for me, was, very much around sport and my rugby and these things. Finished up there, did what all good professional rugby players did when they retired. Myself and a good pal of mine set up a property development company, because that's what we do, and you've got a couple of quid and you think, right, we'll get into that. Set that up at the end of probably late 2006. Kind of got started and things were looking pretty good, and then the bank went, no, it's not looking that good. So, bit of a change of direction of travel. Ended up actually being employed by the Irish Rugby Football Union, and I was the only employee outside of Ireland. So I was in charge of identifying Irish qualified talent across the UK.
Nice.
So I spent nearly 8 years driving up and down all around the UK, identifying young Irish talent, which isn't hard. Go inside the M25 circle and everybody's Irish. So and I think there's probably more Irish people in London than there is in Ireland. So it was great. That was good. That came to a kind of end in terms of just my kind of life cycle of driving and being on the road all the time and doing these things. was coming to an end. But during that time, I'd met so many different people, because actually it wasn't just about players, it was about parents, and it was actually about, engaging with parents as well, because, you may have English or Scottish or Welsh, young kids, but their parents who'd be Irish or Irish qualified because they're grandparents and these sort of things. So ended up that you had all these conversations, you met great people and actually talked a lot about business and what people did. And it kind of became very apparent that, business, everybody has this expectations that if you own a business, I was saying to Mike earlier on, is, you drive a Ferrari, you have a 6-bedroom house and you go home at night and you drink gin and tonics next to your swimming pool. But sure, well, and as you know, that's what your employees think about, about owners of a business, because they have this perception that actually, if you do own a business, you make all this money and so forth. And we all know business. We wish business was like that. Yeah. Unless you're Richard Branson, it doesn't quite work out that way.
Exactly.
But so I set up Effective now actually to help small businesses be more effective. Taking a lot of the kind of knowledge that I gained in terms of even setting up business and these type of things, taking that in to start to help people, but particularly with team stuff as well, because obviously coming out of a team environment and a high-performing team environment, one of the things that we're getting feedback from a lot of businesses was, in terms of the consultancy we're doing, there was this real generational gap. The next young generation of people coming through were awful, and people will say that. And particularly those generations of over 50s would turn around and say, there's no good kids out there. It's really hard to find good young people. And interestingly, so we got ourselves CPD accredited for a course that we do with businesses, and it's all experiential learning. So really what it is it's what we would call team development. Lots of people do team building type activities, or what we would call team bonding type stuff. Great, take them to the pub, take all your staff to the pub, take them out go-karting, do all these things. It's magnificent, right? Because it helps bring the team together. Team development for us is about looking at the challenges that you have within businesses, doing some activity stuff that's a bit of fun, that pulls everybody together, but looking at the learning focus and the learning outcomes of that, and identifying the challenges that you have, and then being able to work through that. So was doing that. Things are good, still doing that at the moment. But I was standing in the rugby club one day and a pal of mine said, have you spoke to my wife? And I said, sorry, could you put a bit of context around that, please? Before we have this conversation, I just want to check where you're going with this one. And he said, no, she's an ex-head teacher in the school. And I was like, no. And he said, well, just listen to what's going on and what you're doing. Have a chat with her. We went and sat down and had a coffee, and she just turned around and said, why are you not delivering this in schools? This is exactly what schools need. Yep. Now, of course, for all of us, if you go to the schools, I was in school in the early 80s. School back then was academic, it was maths, physics, geography, biology, PE, class, rugby, even better. But these things, was very, typical sort of educational pathway. And I was like, yeah, actually, the funny part of this is that you've now got a situation where we're trying to work with businesses to close the gap because of the challenges that young people have in terms of the skills, but actually we're not getting to the root cause.
Yep.
So that led us into this whole thing of, right, okay, well, what is the problem? Why is there a problem? And these things. So we've done a lot of study around this stuff. UNICEF did a global study over 92 countries, and they found that 3 out of 4 of the youth of today between 16 and 24 don't have the skills for the modern day workplace.
Yep.
And you're thinking to yourself,
astonishing, eh?
Well, yeah, but you're thinking to yourself, 3 out of 4, that's ridiculous. What's going on? What's changed? Why aren't schools, creating better kids, or more skilled kids? And you start to look into the sort of the background of this. Next thing we're looking at going, okay, right, we know the pandemic's had an impact. Okay, of course it has. It's impacted the world in many different ways and with a lot of different change. But actually, from a young generational perspective, there's only ever going to be that group of kids that have come through that are going to be impacted by that. Mm-hmm. We're probably starting to see a bit of that now with the senior phase kids in schools because of they might have been junior phase kids. They're struggling a little bit with that. Mm-hmm. That's one small part of that. Secondly, look, the prevalence of screens and technology and all this type of stuff is massive, right? And I would probably ask you guys as well as, I would say your mobile phone is no more than about 3 feet away from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And never is more than about 3 feet away from you. I probably would say the majority of people charge their phone on their bedside table at night beside their bed. So we live in that environment now where when I was young, when your parents used to say, you watch too much television, or if you sit too close to television, you get square eyes and all this type of stuff. And now we go, here you go, kids, why don't you have a television to walk around with and carry around with you? So there's that whole element of things about how they communicate and how they want to communicate and so forth. But the biggest problem is nothing to do with that. Biggest problem is the natural opportunities to develop soft skills, or what they now call meta skills, are disappearing.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Going and having to knock on a door to get your pal to come out to play on a Saturday, or in these things, and having to have the confidence and resilience to stand there. When dad, that one when you stand there and go, don't let dad answer, don't let dad answer, don't let dad answer. Oh, dad's just answered. Oh, don't invite me in. Please don't invite me in. Granny's here as well.
There's so many things like you can. It's not to look at it a negative way, but your meta skills, 100%. But that's just so funny when you're saying even just chapping a door and even getting the rejection when your friends are not in and how they deal with that. I mean, it might sound so trivial to people that were born in the 80s and 90s, born in the 80s, say The Last of Us. But it's a massive thing. Even when we spoke about on the phone previously, getting 50 pence, 10 bob, getting on the bus, then going to the library, speaking to the teller, finding the book, read the book, absorb it. You had to do all of that first in order to get to your goal, where, again, it's not all their fault, technology, just like it wasn't the 20s went to the 40s, the 40s went to the 60s, 60s went to the 80s. It's just how things change. But it sounds like what you're trying to do is find the root cause and find out what the problems are and how you can face them and how you can get them delivering the best version of themselves, basically, for the workplace.
If we look at the way that what we're trying to do is we're trying to create those natural opportunities to develop those skills without young people actually realizing that they're developing the skills. So it's all experiential learning, so it's activity based. Right. So they're focused on the activity, and actually the stuff's a lot of fun. It's challenging, right? There's no point doing it if it doesn't stretch them. And the reality being is they're not thinking to themselves, right? Okay, this is going to improve my communication skills. They're just focused on the activity and trying to do that. Exactly. So we're trying to create that natural environment in a kind of probably a bit of an unnatural way for them to be able to do that, because, as I said, those natural environments have disappeared. Even the things now when we talk about, we were having a laugh, Johnny, earlier on about cash, and these things. Young people don't even know what really cash is, right? These things. Bruce, who works with me, Bruce sent his daughter in to go get some milk from the corner shop. They had no milk, and he just happened to have a $5 in his pocket. And she's only 14, I think, at the time. She went in, came back out again, had the milk. And these things, with the shopkeeper coming out afterwards going, here's your change. And she was like, she didn't know. She'd never been in the shop, because everyone's always just tap.
Yep.
So she just handed over the $5 and walked out. Because she had no idea what the concept of the price was. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter what the price is, because when you're tapping for it, you don't.
And then if you look at that, the conveyor belt of what can happen, the pros and cons for that after that is when they've not maybe got money management skills. It used to be back in the day, like you spent what you had, that was it.
Yeah.
And that's a demise as well. It can cause a problem as well. And discipline, self-awareness, having more conversations. I mean, you think about, we did this thing with the school when you're walking down the street. A simple thing now, just for confidence building and the ability for other people to see what they see. So if a youngster's walking down the street, an older person's walking up, they would score that feeling. If it's maybe just at that dawn time, they were getting a wee bit worried because there was a youth coming down that had the black hoodie on. It might be an absolute lovely kid, but it's just the visualisation and then what they've seen and what they've heard in media and the worry and concern. But I said to the young kids, see if you just say, evening, morning, just one word, it'll diffuse all that. But when they're walking past you, they'll be like, what just happened there? And it's back to this, how things have just changed. Years ago, when I was growing up, you said morning, you always spoke when you were spoken to as well.
Yeah.
Even things like kids nowadays getting invited into adult conversation. Now, you can look at it both ways, but when adults were having a conversation, you just shut up and you went in another room. Adults were talking. And I'm not trying to be tyrannical about it, but there's certain structures in society that work really well for stature, for confidence, discipline. And I feel sometimes that's what we need to build up on and explaining what discipline means and how it best serves you for future generations. I mean, that's just one snippet. I know there's a whole plethora of stuff there that needs to be discussed.
But you're absolutely right, because the reality being is those were those natural opportunities to develop those skills, to understand when you had to listen, when you could speak, how you were to interact with, particularly with older people. But nowadays, I mean,
it's a lost skill.
Because we kind of sometimes look at these things and say, yeah, but that's not the way we should be doing this type. But actually, what we're taking is, I said, all those kind of opportunities out. Back to when you walk through the park, if most of the kids today, there's no eye contact. No. They won't look at you, and that in itself is, and particularly for older people, an older generation who have grown up in an environment, when you look at your parents or your grandparents, if you still have these things, they grew up in an environment where, it was all about eye contact. So when these kids are walking through the park and they won't look at them, that puts fear in people as well, and particularly with older people, because they don't realize that. Yeah. But what older people don't understand is, and I've even seen this from my own perspective, is when, we look at it and go, well, what's wrong with them? Why are they like that? Why? But they're not in that environment to develop these skills. So why would we expect them to be any better than they are? And this is why I think when it comes certainly to business as well, is one of the big challenges is in recruitment. It's really hard to recruit good young people, because we're kind of fighting out for the small talent pool of those kids that are good, probably because a lot of them play sport. Sport's still a great skills developer, or are involved in clubs and different things or different environments. Those kind of kids that are spending a lot of time sitting in the room playing on games and all these type of things are the kids that are the ones that are lacking those skills. Not to say they're not great kids and they haven't got great attributes that will be great for business. We've just got to understand from a business perspective is we've got to take a different kind of.
It's not socially integrated, eh?
Well, I'll give you a great example. My daughter's boyfriend, he's a mechanic, works for Volkswagen, and great young fella, ambitious, doing really well in work and these things. I catch up with him quite a lot, and these things, play a bit of golf with him. And I said to him a couple of months ago, how's work? It's really quiet. There's nothing to do. We're all kind of sitting around, not doing an awful lot. And that kind of went on, and I was out with him last weekend for some golf, and I said, how's things? He said, it's better now. And I said, okay, wait, what's happened? And he said, they employed a young lady, probably in her early 20s, as a receptionist, who didn't like to answer the phone, who wasn't booking in cars because she didn't answer the phone. Wow. So, of course, from a business perspective, the business didn't realise this, and it took them a couple of months to realise that. Oh, and what was the first thing you did? Sacked her.
All
right? But again, my point with this is probably with a lot of things is more senior people make those assumptions that if we're employing somebody to be a receptionist, that they know what that actually means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What we're finding is kids don't actually really know what that actually means. So this is that kind of upskilling piece again, and where business have to look at that is you're nearly going back to having to spell out exactly what that role is.
And do you think that like the school curriculum now is fit for purpose in a sense, because it's been getting done this way for so many years, but things have changed and evolved, and they need to look at things like this. I know that there's some, like we've done the mentoring program with Queen Anne, and to be honest, it was a surprise to us how good they were. And it was like, they do get a bad rap, the kids, but we actually found a good pool of kids there. So Queen Anne are doing a job, but
give them the right environment and they thrive. And actually, their growth is huge, because you got to remember they're coming from a low level. So, and we're working with senior phase kids, so S4, S5, S6, because these are the kids. Our cohort of young people that we're working with are really those that are not the top 20% of the kids in school, the ones that are going to go to university. That's great. We still want to help and support them, but actually they're on a career sort of trajectory and pathway. Bottom 20% of kids in the school are actually pretty well looked after by the state. There's lots of good stuff going on there. Those are the more socially and economically challenged kids. Probably those that probably aren't attending school as much or very little. There are definitely great pathways there. We work with what they call the forgotten kids, or as one school called them the grey kids. Right? These kids in the middle that are just probably like the 60%. I was one of those kids just trundling along, doing what you had to do, but really weren't quite sure, where you were going to go. These kids are going to leave school probably in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. They're going to stay in the area. They're going to live at home for the next 7 to 10 years because they can't afford to go anywhere. And within those regions, that's going to become your next workforce.
Yep.
So if you're a business within that region, right, and you need to recruit, staff, that's your next workforce. So the point here is that you can either do two things about it. You can influence that, or you can just sit and bitch and moan the fact there's no good kids out there. But going back to the point about the education system, it's been well highlighted and well documented, on the news and all sorts of things, that the education system isn't fit for purpose because we're still teaching kids based on knowledge. And as we know now, particularly with the dawn of AI and these type of things, how much knowledge you're going to have to know in the future. What are the things that are going to become important? So probably the things that were important 50 years ago
they're just not now,
aren't going to be important now. But skills are still always going to be...
Human interaction is going to always be there. You've got a fire. I've just had like a big fire lit in my belly there. So I'm just trying to calm it down, just simmer down with it. I go bang, 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 bang. But it's so prevalent and it's so important what you're doing just now. It's like you're challenging the status quo, what's actually happening just now in schools. And I've seen, so my daughter's 15 and my youngster's 11, so I've seen some of the schoolwork and some of it's actually pretty good.
Yep.
And there are things that the teachers are doing, small little changes, which is, it's encouraging to see. And there's some of the stuff they're teaching them, I haven't even got a clue. I don't even know how to do it. But it is the interpersonal skills. And when you see the traits of anxiety or however you see that in life, that's a big problem just now. So let's find a deterrent or find something that can give them a soft landing to help them. And it's not been, again, tyrannical or, in 60s, 70s, 80s, just get on with it, pull your socks up. Yes, there's an element of that, but they're growing up in their box just now where we never grew up in that box, just like our fathers and mothers before us. They grew up in a certain box. It's about us now identifying the bits that they're struggling with and how we can bring some of the stuff that we knew from the 60s, 70s and 80s and implement it just so we don't lose that, because you are only another, I'm going to hazard a guess at 20 years, 30 years, and that's going to die out unless we pass that knowledge on. And it's like you never die with the knowledge, you have to pass it on.
Yeah. Well, it's passing, but it's passing on the right knowledge as well.
Right, exactly,
and I think one of the things that we look at in going forward is growing up, the world moved at a relatively slow pace. The world now moves at a fast pace. So things, but back in the day, if you bought a new car, it was a new car for at least a year, if maybe not longer. Nowadays, it's a new car for about 5 minutes before they brought out the next latest version of it and these type of things. So the world moves more quickly. The world of business moves more quickly. We're all probably adapting business and you're evolving your business and things that we did for years. It's always where's that next step and how do we grow and how do we become sustainable and these type of things. So whereas probably 50, 60 years ago, you did one thing, and if you probably did that one thing, you did it really, really well, and that was fine because people bought from you because it was the quality of what you did was superb, and these type of things. Nowadays, it's this whole environment of speed. I can order it today and I'll have it by tomorrow.
Exactly.
So we're
6 weeks waiting for my shoes to come.
But exactly. And they're all going. What do you mean? Like DPD, it could be delivered between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. Why can't you give me an exact? It's only an hour, but yet we're getting that. We even have that thing now, right, where we probably all do it sort of subconsciously at times. Is you go to the shop and you buy some stuff, you tap your card and it says no, please insert your card and insert your PIN. You're like, what a chore! I had to put in those 4 numbers. And we think because all we don't want to do is just tap and run away. Yeah. So it is, we're living in that environment now, and that's where the kids are living. To give you a bit of a kind of context around why some of these things that I find really weird, being in my 50s, find really strange is like my daughter. I have 2 kids, 22 and 19, and my daughter who whose boyfriend is obviously a mechanic. She's moved out. They bought a house. Fantastic. Unbelievable actually at their age to do this. They did this. But anyway, when she was living at home a couple of years ago, she said, "Oh, Dad, my pal Heather's going to come and pick me up and take me to work." And I was like, "Yeah, fantastic." And we live in the cul-de-sac. And we're sitting in the living room just chatting away. Next thing I could see Heather coming in, turning the car, and I says, "Cheerio." And she went, "What do you mean?" I says, "Well, Heather's outside, I can see her." She goes, "Dad, you're really weird." And I went, "What do you mean?" She goes, "She'll text me when she's ready." And I went, "I'm really weird. I'm not the weird one in here." And I said, but that to me was like one of these things going, like, you think I'm weird because I've said to you to go outside and walk out because she's coming to come and pick you up. She knows she's going to come pick you up and you're just going to walk. She goes, "But that's really weird, Dad, because she'll text me when she's ready." I thought, wow, different world we live in.
Oh, that is, God almighty, aye. I suppose you're trying to listen to them to find out how things are. I mean, I don't. That's a head scratcher for me. I'm going to have to process that one.
So we worked in the days of where you still had to post stuff. Mm-hmm. And the time it took for all that to happen. Imagine we would I had a workshop in East Kilbride, so the stuff that we were doing, you had to get drawings delivered, so you'd have to wait till those drawings came, and then the back and forwards of that, everything took way, like you had the time to actually sit and do the jobs properly. But nowadays, everything's just about speed, when you see the quality of things now, nothing's built to last anymore. And I know that's if you've got a business where people have to keep buying stuff, that's a good model.
We even went into the realms of architects, and it's just all fast, cheap architectural designs now. I'm not saying all of them, but if you look at what we've built in Britain, what we've built across the world for centuries, it's fascinating, some of the intricacies and the actual carpentry, the stonemasons, absolute brilliant, spectacular, but it's just became slow and quicker and not as palatial.
If we look at some of the buildings, the great buildings in the world, some buildings took hundreds of years to build. Nowadays,
just throwing them up.
Well, the repercussions for businesses, if that was the case, would be
that's 22. 20 weeks to build a house now, pretty much, start to finish. 20 weeks to build a house, start to finish. Slab.
But even if we look at how that's done nowadays, right? So basically, let's build a roof before we even put it on the house, and then we'll just lift it onto the house type stuff, and nowadays, particularly all this modular stuff that's being created now as well, it'll soon be a point where you'll just get a house that'll just come in the back of a truck and it'll just be,
Pretty much, you're pretty much getting that to a point.
Stuff is kind of that. You're just mechanical set. Even though the electrics, everything's already in the walls. You're just delivering it and putting it together.
Which means then the world of work you see for young people is changing.
Yes.
And that's what their biggest challenge is, and that probably takes us full circle in terms of what those skills development for them is that we obviously are working on skills, the meta skills development for them to get them ready, or we call them employability skills because it's actually the things that the feedback that we've had from businesses is these are the things that they struggle with. So we're taking those and those employability skills are making, young people more employable because actually, like a lot of things is in this day and age is you put it out there, you've got a position you want filled, particularly for young people, you get 100 CVs in, and then you've got to make a determination based on how good their AI skills in terms of writing their CV are. Oh, yeah, AI. Mum and Dad have written this one. These type of things that you kind of have to make a decision on. You're going to interview 5 of them, for example, out of 100 based on the information you've got, not knowing what their skill set is. Mm-hmm. Only based on what they're, because that's really probably a CV is usually probably educational type stuff. What they've learned, what they're involved in. But it doesn't tell you anything about the skills.
And that's where we've talked quite a bit about, it's more the attitude and behaviours of them. It's not, for us, it's not necessarily what skill, because if they've got the right attitude, you can teach them the skills.
100%.
And I think the bit that we see as a failing is that they just don't have the right attitude now. They don't want to do the things that, you're coming in to do an interview. And we've heard it over for a few businesses now that we know that they're doing interviews and the interview process is actually getting reversed, that they're actually interviewing the employer. This is what they want. This is what their needs are. And it's like, this is the job description. This is what you're in for. If you don't want it, then,
Well, why apply for a job, right, that says it's office based 5 days a week, and you go, I don't want to work in the office 5 days a week. Well, why have you gone? It's like going grocery shopping and saying, I'm in for a pineapple, but I'll pick a banana. Right. Because it's cheaper, right? And these things. But I didn't really want it, but I'll take that. This, that job application thing is people are applying for jobs and then going, yeah, but can I tell you how I want to work for you?
Yep. Yeah.
See, this is different, right? So there's two sides to this. I'm thinking here. Maybe the demographic is now changing because of COVID, because new things develop after change, even when it's brought upon you, and you just have to deal with it. Maybe people are valuing a Monday to a Thursday in work environment, and that our new generation is more thinking, no, it's all about me, and it's about family, and it's about friends, and it's about exploring. Something we have to think about adapting. And our fathers before us, they'd be like, what the hell is going on here? Because there was more of a stubbornness, and the ones before it went to war. They've lived in a life what they've had to do for themselves and their family, and the generation, they might see it differently. But sometimes we have to yield a little bit and go, well, let's see where you're going with this, because this might actually be really good. But I still echo the part, when you're coming for a job, attitude and behaviour, but then to rewind it, just a sales ploy, which I think is really important, because everyone is a salesman. And it's just about developing your words, your mannerisms, all of that, in which it will best suit the outcome for you. So, for instance, a CV nowadays, I look at that, and when we were at the schools, I'm like, your job is to make sure your CV just sticks out more than the 50. Then what are you going to do? You're going to put a border around it. You're going to cut it at an angle. You're going to make it stand out. You're going to make it feel different, the texture. You're going to post it. And you only build your CV on the job that you're going for. Nothing else. You should have 10 different CVs based on the subject or the job that you're going for, the category. And that's just a sales ploy. And then you start doing interview techniques like the 1-to-20 game, all these things.
Which is absolutely correct, because actually most businesses, particularly small businesses, are looking for motivated and enthusiastic people. Exactly. Why? Because you can teach them all the knowledge that you need. And actually, let's be really honest with you, a lot of the stuff that we're teaching them in schools, and that knowledge in schools, in a lot of businesses isn't actually that relevant. So, even there's a lot of conversations around things like maths and so forth today, right? The understanding of maths is really important. Yeah. The knowledge of maths necessarily for a lot of businesses isn't, right? So it's really great to understand how these things work, but you've also then got to look at that and say, okay, how we talk a lot about the stuff we do about applied learning, right? So how do you take what you've learned and how do you apply that into the workplace? Because actually the reality being is that there's a load of things, from school that you guys
just never
don't
use again.
Like, but you've never even really had to use it. Yeah. Think about your maths, right? And particularly in the building trade. Pythagoras theorem. Yeah,
I knew you were going to see that one.
But because we know that's the one, right? But what about all the other trigonometry, right? Can you remember?
SCQF and all that, or whatever it was. SCQF?
Cos.
Pi, 3.143. I'm only kidding, I don't know the first three.
But yeah, right? Yeah. And that's the nature of all these things, is that, we have all this learning in school, right? And then depending on the nature of the job that you go into, but also going back to that piece there about jobs that young people are going into, right? One of the big challenges, probably has been an age-old challenge, is careers advice, right? Because you're asking somebody within a school, usually a teacher or an ex-teacher in the school, right? Somebody who's gone to school, left school, gone to university, gone back into school, and had a whole career in education, to give advice to kids in terms of what jobs are out there and what jobs they should get into, right? In this day and age, right? Could I name 100 jobs, different roles? I could name you 100 different roles in one business, let alone, and this whole thing again is, you may have a construction business, but everybody in your business doesn't work in construction.
Tools, yeah, exactly.
No, you could have got HR, you've got admin, you've got marketing, you've got, all sorts of things, social media people, all these different roles in there. But then you're asking somebody to educate kids in terms of what that is. So for too long, right, we've been, and particularly with the system in terms of, schools are measured on attainment and positive destination. So the idea is can we find a positive destination for young people leaving school? Well, hence why the university piece is such a big thing, because it's the gold standard. It's like, that's an easy positive destination for us because the kids are going to go to university, tick the box, aren't we doing great?
Yeah.
The other stuff then gets really hard. And this is why we end up with then young people, we're trying to put square pegs into round holes where you're getting advices, right? And no reflection on these industries, but you're not going to university, right? And can't do that. And you haven't got the grades to do this. Have you thought about construction, or have you thought about hospitality, or have you thought about, health and beauty and these type of things? And you think to yourself, but they're not lesser opportunities, right? Going back to what you said, John, earlier on about, architecture and these things, let's be real. I want the smart people building my house, right? I don't want those young people who don't, have got no skills and no qualifications to be building. We want the right people doing the right things. But of course, the easiest thing is just push them there. I think we're looking for 250,000 apprenticeships within the construction industry in Scotland, right? What's happening is the completion rate for apprenticeships in there is less than 60%, because what's happening is kids are being told at school, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. What about going and getting a trade? And they think, well, that's all there is for me. They go and start that. A year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, they go, I don't want to do this.
For them, yeah.
So there's another way I can totally say, and I'm all for what you're saying as well. It's just there's a deep dive into these conversations, and one of the big difficulties just now, maybe off a different subject on it, is the costings now for young people, for a business to sustain them, where we need the hierarchy, the government to support that, because I'm all for taking apprentices on, but at the cost of the business is extremely difficult. And the lack of people at the college now not turning up, the lecturers, that happened quite a lot with my apprentices. But that said, the youngsters coming through, when the careers advisors are there, and I don't know if you echo this conversation, this kid's not got a part-time job. They don't know what a kid, it needs to know, like a kid, asking a kid now at 15, 16, what do you want to do for your living? I don't know. Of course they don't know. Some people don't have their shit together when they're 25, not even 30. But the thing is, there's a misconception where you need to have your shit together. It's nice to have it and learn to fall into society, get your mortgage and get your car payments and getting all that and go on your holiday and contribute to society. But you've still got another 45 years when you're 30, if you're lucky. You can stay at your parents' house for a longer. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd rather them leave. But again, people living their life based on other people's opinions. And maybe that's actually changing. Maybe that was our generation. We're always worried about what people were thinking about us. Maybe it's dwindling away in this generation. Who knows? But yeah, trying to get a positive destination for a youngster. But if there was something, and I don't know if this is what you're trying to achieve, I can see this exploding even bigger. A destination would be your place, and whatever that's got might be called your place. There you go. I want the rights on that. You bring youngsters in every city, and you require them to get a certificate on the soft skills, and then you produce. They go out the other side of the door saying you've just completed that. You're now worthy, and you've got that experience. They might actually be aware of what they actually want to do more than they were at school, where they were confined to that 9 till 3, 9 till 4. And again, sorry to keep going on here, never ever underestimate, I don't think we do, but never underestimate the power of an inspirational teacher. Like they're the backbone to our next generation, and we should be imploding them and helping them and really getting the good leaders in school, not just a maths teacher that when you get promoted to become a shithead teacher. You really want somebody that's going to be stature, that's ready to lift everybody up. And I was lucky, I had a couple of really, really inspirational teachers for me. And I hope the kids nowadays have more of them, even though it's harder for teachers as well. But
I think on a couple of points, starting with your first one, right, particularly with the apprenticeship stuff, it's what they now call the 100K gamble, right? Because for 4 years, it'll probably cost you as a business about £100,000 in terms of salaries, educational costs. equipment costs, all the things you need to provide for a young apprentice who has got to go through a 4-year process to get that apprenticeship. You invest that £100,000 and they turn around and say, I don't want to do it anymore. Or they go, right, I'm now qualified, and then they go,
off,
I'm going to go somewhere else, right? Because no loyalty in the world with everything. We see that particularly in sports, right? There's no loyalty to any team in sports. The highest, payer,
highest
bidder gets the best player. So we've got that challenge there. So why, as a business, would you want to invest in people, right? And our point with that is that actually what we want to do is we want you to invest in the right people. So let's get back to what you said, Johnny. I love that idea. We are on that at the moment in terms of the idea with our business partnership model is we have business partners that help us to educate young people in terms of what the opportunities are, what those career pathways are, what types of things they do, where those things lie, and actually can we now start to actually direct young people into pathways, not forever, not for life. There's no jobs for life anymore, but can we start to direct them into things that are more suitable to what they want to do, rather than just going to do something because they have to find something to do. And this is where the challenge lies then in terms of that education, right, systems, teachers, right? You'll remember the days and you'll remember the teachers in your school that had the biggest influences on you. We have, one of the challenges we have when we put our skills tutors into the school. We run a 35-week course in the school. We do a block of 12 modules, all on, meta skills, employability skills, all focused with learning outcomes on these specific things. Once we've done that, we restart the 12 modules again. Because like all things coming out of the world of sport is, I can't just show you something once and expect to be able to do it.
Exactly.
You have to then be able to learn how to do that. Can you take the applied learning from the first time you've done it? Can you remember how to do it? And can you make it better? And can you, so all the activities we do, the expectations are with young people is once they've done it once, when we come back the second time, they should be able to do it better, faster, more efficiently, and these type of things. Not always the case at the moment, but that's a work in progress. We have an accreditation. So the students we have an accreditation from SCQF level 2 to level 6, which is a Scottish higher level. So the idea being with this piece about having that bit of paper that says you've done this, for us and particularly for the idea being with our business partners, is we would love to get to a situation in the next 2 or 3 years where we are then starting to find the cohort of kids that we have opportunities with the businesses that they want to go into, and actually then starting to place them into these businesses and so forth. We were with GoFibre yesterday, new broadband providers who are rapidly moving across Scotland, great jobs, and they're saying, they want to engage with young people. They've got all these roles in sales and they're engineers and IT and admin and marketing and all sorts of things. Loads of opportunities for young people, and they need that workforce.
Yep.
And you're kind of going, perfect, because now all we need to find is those type of young people who'd be interested in that type of work, connect them both together, and we'll have a look. The world is not that simple. We can't get everybody a job and these things, but we can get the right people doing the right things.
You can get the right people and the ones that
Yeah, 100%. and then with the idea being is on a CV, if you've got our award on there, right, and it's if you get a Nat 5 or a higher in that, business can look at that and go, well, okay, there we go.
Some on it,
It's nearly like the stamp to say these guys have a better understanding of what the working world looks like. Because back to what you said earlier on, Johnny, right, getting a job under the age of 16, right, you talk to your grandparents, right, your grandparents worked when they were 11 or 12 years of age.
Right,
Your parents, used to work when they were young. Getting a part-time job wasn't hard because you get paid cash in hand and cash was readily available and you could do a few hours here and there. If we look at it now, part-time work, you have to be over the age of 16. You get part-time work predominantly in the kind of hospitality sector, working, Starbucks or Costa or these type of things, which is fine, but it's not really a true reflection of what the workplace looks like because that's only one sector.
Yeah.
So, well, you guys, take the building trade, for example, right? I mean, kids have no idea what a building site even looks like.
I know.
It's so different. I think one of the things I'm taking from it is the fact that you're giving the kids an opportunity to see the scope of different elements within a business, just like you're saying there. That opens up a lot of doors for people. They're not even maybe realising that all this exists. They can get into these sectors and different aspects of businesses. And I think that's valuable, because that somebody that's a bit lost doesn't know that opens some doors to at least some avenue they can go down. And it obviously might not be the end of the journey for them, but it might kick them onto another door that opens. And
it's even the point of giving them the opportunity to see things that they don't want to do.
Well, that's true.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's nearly like that. Well, I know that I don't want to do that, rather than back to the apprenticeship thing in construction. It's better that they have a look at that and find out they don't want to do it,
Yep.
rather than starting the process. We took 13 young adults from Kelso High School. We're in all 9 schools in the Borders. Borders Council have funded us to be in all 9 schools in the Borders. They're very progressive in this type of stuff. We took 13 of the kids from there to a company called Plexus. Plexus employ 25,000 people around the world. They're based in the head office in the States, but they've got offices all around the world. They're based in Kelso and in Bathgate. 2 big sites, great company. And we took the 13 kids and the 13 kids went, we drive past this every day. We didn't even know what they did.
Yep.
Aye.
And you kind of think to yourself, well then, great, but then if a job ad comes up, why would they apply for it if they don't even know what it is?
Yep.
You know?
This is what I always say, my wee word, it's the opportunities. Giving people opportunities to see. Because some parents won't do what my parents maybe did. Some parents are split, some people are divided, all these things. You just don't know what's happening in the background of a kid, and they don't know any better sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's having somebody like you in your business, effective now, being there to, I suppose, to help them and nourish them, regardless of what's happened in the past. You're kind of that beacon of light that you're going to help them discover, a different pathway, or discover something that they never even knew themselves that they had. Because there's nothing better when I do the coaching for the kids at the football, and the psychologist, as you'll know, is like from a youngster, and they're living, if it's a negative, it's got to be built up with 2 positives, trying to push them. But when you can see the sudden shift in a kid, when you praise them for something they've maybe not had any praise that week or that month, that year, and when you give it, it's like they're getting a bit emotional because they've never had that, and go, you've got this, I totally see how well you're doing this. Absolutely nailed it. It's not about putting them down for picking a negative, always picking that drive for positive to motivate them. And you've seen it in the kids.
That was good.
When you see them, even the ones that never got in.
Yeah, Maya's went and got herself a part-time job, but it's in a bar, and one of her things was her confidence. But you've seen the difference, because we met them the other day. The difference in her is amazing, because she's now out speaking to people, having to deal with different age groups, different conversations, and it's given her a lot of confidence. Going forward, and these are the skills that are missing now, I think, because they're just not getting out there.
Well, I think for us, even our kind of 3 pillars are confidence, resilience, and communication.
Yep.
Like if you can build just even those 3 elements to what you do.
Yep.
I mean, we know the resilience part. We had that when we were young, because you got told no all the time.
Yep.
Well, kids don't get told no anymore.
No, exactly.
And if they do, it's World War III. That's the biggest drop in the world.
Exactly. You see it all the time.
If you say to my young fella, would you please bring your dishes down from your room? And I'm thinking to myself, why am I even saying that? We all have to sit at the kitchen table and have dinner. You weren't allowed to disappear off your food somewhere else and these type of things. And I said to him, please bring your dish. You're always giving off to me. No, well, yeah, probably I am, but why? One, because you don't do what I ask you to do, and these things. But it's just this. But it's a cultural change, right? And society's always done that. We've evolved and we do different things, and we've different habits and so forth. But back to what we said, Mike, there about the confidence pieces. Just have to give the kids the right environment,
Exactly.
and you know what, they flourish.
Yep.
And if you do take that, and we know this in sports, that we put them in the right positions at the right time, and we give them encouragement, right? They buy into it,
blossom,
right? But they do. And I think that's one of the challenges at the moment is that probably from a work expectation is that, and from business owners, and hopefully, if there's business owners that listen to this, it's actually just taking a bit of a better understanding. Funny enough, actually yesterday, CEO of Go Fibre came in, just stick his head through the door. I haven't met him before. We deal with some of the other girls there. Great fella. Came in, we're just chatting, and he's actually his kids went to private school and these things. We're just chatting about why kind of we were doing what we're doing. And when I explained to him about kind of the natural opportunities, and he just went, "Wow, I've never thought about it like that. I've never actually really taken the time to think that's why they don't have skills." And he went, "That's really, really interesting." And I kind of thought to myself, well, exactly, because we're all busy doing what we're doing that we never really take the time to think, why don't these young people have the skills that's required for the modern day workplace? You know, why can't they pick up a telephone, right? Why can't they answer a telephone? Right? I mean, that's one of the biggest things that we get from our business partners is that, you know, young people really struggle to pick up a telephone because we don't ask them to do it.
Yep.
Like,
Ever.
you know, you guys probably text your kids. You know,
Exactly,
if you want
that's what I say,
something,
it's
you
not
text
even
them.
phoning, it's texting more now than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I like a FaceTime. Do you know what's interesting what you were saying there about, so I had an aha moment. So there's a girl that I did my NLP training with, Rebecca Bonington, there's a shout out for her. And you talk about meta and then you talk about the Milton experience. She says, what you're going to find after this experience, it was 9 weeks experience, you're going to get a little bit frustrated. And you go, why do people not know this? And like, you're 100% right. And it's not really hugely difficult, but when you get it, you become a little bit more, right, let's try and put myself into their position. You try and see it from a different angle, opposed to just me. And it's really interesting when kids can do that. You're like, wow, you've no idea, just with small changes, incremental changes, you can become a much better version of yourself very, very quickly.
Well, I must say hello to Rebecca. So the reality is with all this stuff is that, but you only know what you know,
Exactly.
you know, and I said, we've all become busy as well, you know, and sometimes we are, you know, and we look back in history, you know, work used to be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you know, work's 24/7 now, you know, for most people. We have this whole generation of people who were, you know, the expectation is, you know, okay, you're going to pay me for 40 hours a week, but your expectations are you have to do 60 hours a week, right? That next generation, and probably rightly so, are going to turn and say, I'm not doing that. Yep. You know, if you're going to pay me, you're going to pay me for what I work, not for what you think I should be working, you know? And they're right. You know, why should we have, you know, dedicated 60 hours and get paid for 40? Because the reality is that, you know, you wouldn't expect, you can't go into Tesco's and say, I tell you what, I'm going to take all this, but you know what, I'm only going to give you half the amount of money for it because that's the way I would like it to be done. So I think the next generation of young people are going to change that whole mentality, which is great. And that's why probably I talk about going back to measuring on performance rather than on time. Because actually, how do you get the best out of people, right? But actually giving people, would you rather, said earlier on, would you rather have somebody who can do the job in 3 hours or somebody who can do the job in 6 hours? If you give it to the person who can do it in 3 hours, and then you go, okay, that's great, we'll just give you that again, right? All they'll do is revert back to type and go, well, I'll just take the 6 hours that you've given me to do it. If we actually look after them and say, you smash that out of the park and then, you know, you can do whatever you want, you can go home early, these things. All building those relationships, building trust, building high-performing teams, all these type of things, getting away from this kind of punching your card type stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it was like that in Australia. I was there, the first time was 2001, and they worked like that. You know, there's no overtime. They started, like, I only worked in the trades, maybe, I think Sydney was the first time, doing roofs, and the tilers were looking to get on this roof, like they were chapping at the bit. So the gaffer's on going, you know, we're overtime daft in this country, so at the time, and so he's on asking, and he's like, just went round, everybody was working on this roof, and they're all like, no chance, like no chance, not doing any overtime, not working the weekends, I'm just doing what I'm doing, and that's it. So I've got my life to live, you know, it was more about the life than the work they were doing. And I was standing there going, this isn't you, because I was ready to just go, yeah, of course, need the money.
Andy was like that, because you said you were in New Zealand, Mark.
Yeah.
Andy went to New Zealand, and they said, we don't want you working weekends, we want you to go away and
enjoy yourself.
enjoy yourself. I'm like, wow, there's a different shift.
When I was out there, I had a job. They got me a job. The club got me a job in the timber yard.
Right.
Loved it. It was class, right? Just, you know, outdoors, meeting people, you know, that whole cultural change type thing and these things. And I remember at times I would be sitting there and one of the guys from the club would pull up with his ute and the boat on the back.
Ute? Another person calls that a ute?
Well, it is.
And utility going, when he came up with, what the hell is a ute?
But that's what it was out there. And he'd pull up and he'd go, right, come on, we're going fishing. And I'd be going, I'm working. And he went, I spoke to the boss, we're going fishing. And it would take off and you just see, and then I come in the next day all kind of sheepish going, boss is going to say something. Never, because
just that balance.
But we've also got to a point now where expectations and how quickly we can do work is getting stupid as well. As Johnny, you said earlier on about building houses, 20 weeks, right? Okay, if we're shortening up the timescales of how we have to do these things, someone's got to give, usually quality, So, and our expectations is that where we don't manage time and workload, we expect people to be able to do everything. Right. By the way,
exactly what you're saying, though. It's a case of if you're doing it quicker, absolutely, you just get more lumped on you.
Yeah.
And then that expectation's there that you have to get through that as well. So before you know it, you've done all that quicker, and then you're getting even more. So the burnout.
I'm not surprised it's not jobs for life. Because why would you want to go at 100 miles? This analogy, and I use it for lots of businesses and these things, right? Okay, either you two ever run a marathon?
No.
Right?
Sweating thinking.
No. Thinking about it.
But put it this way, right? If I said to you, you're going to run a marathon, right? Would you sprint it?
Nah, you would.
No.
Because you can't.
No.
Right? Because if you could sprint a marathon, Usain Bolt would be the fastest marathon runner on the planet.
Aye.
But of course you can't, because it's all about managing your resources and your expectations and your energy and all these type of things. Why in work are we trying to sprint a marathon? Why do we go, let's go at 100 miles an hour all the time, and then we wonder why we get people who are burnt out and people who leave and these type of things? Because we're not managing those expectations.
I think that's the leaders in the business. That's where the boundaries, if they need to set boundaries that manage all that, so that you're not putting the teams under that pressure and burning them out. Because if you're burning them, you get good key members of staff, and then you burn them out, they are going to leave.
Yeah. And
you're just stuck in a sort of rut of having to rebuild constantly in your business. So it is down to that.
But then, if we then go back to the younger generation, your kids are what they see.
Yeah.
And if your kids see that, they don't want to do that. Now your kids won't do things, that they don't want to do because they've seen it with their parents. I don't want to go down that route of becoming a solicitor, because all I see is you working for 12 hours a day. You go to work, you come home, and then you disappear off into your office and you work for another 3 or 4 hours. I don't want to do that. But that doesn't mean to say that they can't become great lawyers or great solicitors or great whatever.
You just do it a different way, I suppose. Yeah. Well, what for today, Mark, if you had to say anything, any potential buyers or even parents and whatnot, you want to get your name out there, what would you be actually saying to them? Just a small question there. Just
a small. Look, the reality of what we're trying to do is we have a business partnership program, and let me be clear in terms of how that works. We engage with businesses. We ask for a little bit of financial support from them. In fact, we actually ask them to make that contribution themselves to whatever they want that to be in terms of what value they see for that. The return in that is for them is that they actually get to engage with us within the schools. We actually can do site visits. We can actually start to do work experience, these type of things. We can start to align the right young people coming out of schools, and we are talking about senior phase kids that are ready to come out into the workforce. So to do that with them, we're looking for as many businesses on board as possible, because it actually gives them the opportunity for the young people to have more, I suppose, more vision in terms of what's available, what's out there, what those chances are. But also, I said before, is we are, the schools program in itself is only 18 months old. Right. We're already in 25 schools. The likelihood is by 26-27 academic year, we could be in 80 to 100 schools. That's brilliant. We want to be in all 300. There's 361 state schools in Scotland. 3 of them are special needs that wouldn't, the stuff that we do just wouldn't be applicable for that. 358 schools. We'd love to be in all 358 schools. Currently speaking to Scottish Government as well about this type of stuff, because it's actually something that's needed.
Well, I think it should be part of the curriculum.
And that's a big part. We're going through a new accreditation at the moment with Newbattle Abbey College. They're putting us through. So our course will actually be accredited right up to hopefully SCQF level 7, which means an advanced higher type stuff. All right. So, loads going on. We still do lots of business development with business as well. If you've got teams and you want to do some meaningful work, we do a lot with that. We're still with business as well. So, just trying to conquer the world.
Yep. And the best way to find you, if anybody wants to speak to you?
You can find us on, you can either find me on LinkedIn. You can find us at Effective Now, www.effectivenow.co.uk, on most social media platforms as well. We post plenty of stuff up there. So, we'd love people to get in touch, love to work with as many people as possible. And it has got significant value for your business as well, because things like ESG and CSR, that social impact, we can help you with that, because obviously investing in us means you're investing in your communities.
Yep. That's brilliant.
So,
Well, I think it's amazing, and I think network is so important. And Mike, you want the button, don't you?
I won the button. This is just a nice way to finish up as our little tagline.
This is your world.
Shape it.
Or someone else will.